We're going to kick it off as folks trickle in. Thanks so much. Again, I'm Jesse Ross with Learner-Centered Collaborative, and we're here today to talk about school redesign, but school redesign from the lens of a learner-centered approach, which is obviously near and dear to our hearts. As we do this, we're in a moment here, we're going to have a chance to hear from people who are in the middle of this process, which is so vital. So Carmen Sanders and Michael Anderson are going to talk a little bit about their redesign stories, and I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment here. First, I'm just going to give us a little bit of context, a little bit of framing, and then we'll jump right in. And of course, we want to hear from you, your questions as we jump in. So as I mentioned, we're here with Learner-Centered Collaborative, and we are here to redesign the future of public education. And for us, we're quite sure that that future is learner-centered, and that for us, we envision a future where all learners know who they are, they thrive in community, and they actively engage in the world as their best selves. We're so fortunate to be partnered in this work with folks all over the country who are recognizing that we need to make this shift to learner-centered education. And part of that movement is, as I mentioned, Carmen and Michael with us today to talk about their specific approach to redesign. We are partnered with folks all over the country in a number of capacities, and just a few of them are listed here. We'll share some materials at the end of our time here if something piques your interest and you want to follow up. But we're going to move us towards jumping right in and say that, as I mentioned, that future is learner-centered, and redesign it's vital, right? We're thinking about what are we designing towards, and what are we designing away from? We're moving away from a system that is school-centered or teacher-centered and placing learners at the middle, right? And when we do that, we see them at the center of this ecosystem, being really clear in our redesign about what are the outcomes that we want our learners to have, what do they want to have, and obviously centering their voice in all of this work. What are the models that the classroom instruction and experiences that will support those outcomes? What is the school around that will make sure that those models are possible to have in place? And that's where we're going to focus our conversation today. Moves that Carmen has made, moves that Michael has made, in order to make sure that even once you have clarity around what those teaching and learning goals are and what the outcomes are, how are you going to put them into practice? And so we're going to hear from them about what has been smooth and easy and what has been challenging and where they are in the middle of that process. Obviously, even having that design in place, the conditions around them need to be supportive and make sure they facilitate those goals. And culture surrounds everything. We know that. And if we're not thoughtful about the culture that we design, it designs itself. And so we want to make sure that this is a learner-centered space through and through. So we're going to jump in. As we design with partners, we've had the opportunity to test over and over, what are the big levers when we think about school redesign? Where can we get the most out of a shift in the design of a school and in the design of a learning experience? And for us, we've identified starting number one with a clear identity. Knowing who you are, who you serve, why you're there, drives everything else. Once that is in place, then being able to lean in on aspects of real-world learning, performance assessment of whole learner outcomes, so competency-based assessment, teacher collaboration, spaces that have strong room and dedicated time for teacher collaboration have a more learner-centered, a stronger outcome for their learners. Is there opportunities for distributed leadership, not just amongst teachers and school leaders, which is so vital, but also amongst students and teachers? And are there opportunities for small learning communities to gather and grow together? So that's the learner-centered collaboratives design structure. What's so important when we do this work is this is asset-based work. And so we want to talk about the strengths that we bring to this work, but we want to know about the strengths that, of course, Carmen and Michael are bringing to this work and what they leaned on as they've gone into the redesign process, but also for everybody in this call. You're here for a reason. You have insights to share. And so we would love for this to be an active chat, ask questions, share insights. Let's learn from each other during our time here today. All right. If you want to dig a bit deeper, you've got a QR code, and I'll leave it up here for a minute. We've created a school redesign playbook that goes into a lot of depth about each of these elements and the overall structure. We're not going to spend time in that depth right now, but we're going to give you the opportunity, again, to use the QR code, but also at the end, we'll provide a link. So feel free to check it out, and I hope you do. When we talk about making these big moves, redesigning, again, what are we redesigning towards? What does that look like within each of these levers? And I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I want to name that. What does this look like if we say we want to make sure that you have small learning communities? Well, let's just throw a few ideas on the table so that we can all be talking about some of the same things, right? That might be advisory or mixed age cohorts. What is the physical design of your space? Is it something that is conducive to having learners gathering in small groups and being able to participate and engage with each other? Or is it just, rows of students facing a teacher? And when it comes to something like real world learning, do you have career pathways, community partnerships, master schedules, right? Master schedule also shows up when you talk about teacher collaboration. Are we creating space in the day for teachers to be able to collaborate, to be able to work together? If we say we value that, does the structure of the schedule support that, right? What about performance assessment and portfolios and student-led conferences? Again, we're going to hear from the specifics of Carmen and Michael in just a moment here, but we might be referencing back as we go to some of these specific big moves as a reference point. But Michael, you take it off. Tell us now where you are in this process, where you began. What should we know about school redesign at West?
Hey everybody, Michael Anderson. I am the principal of West Campus, currently in my second year. I was a high school principal prior to West, and we are lucky to have a 101-year-old building in District 11 in Colorado Springs, and it's a very diverse school with about 90% free and reduced lunch population. And we have the privilege to serve families that need a lot from their school community. So in my first year, I got the privilege of meeting Jesse and the team, and we kicked off the idea and the promise to our community that we were going to be a true preschool through eighth grade campus. Before I was there, it was two separate schools under one roof. It was an elementary school and a middle school. And they had two completely different bell schedules, different start and end times. And so this year is actually the first year the school's ever been on the same schedule. And we started with working with Jesse last, was it spring, Jesse? If you want to go to that next,
Yeah.
that schedule, the timeline. And in the so February, yes, we started working together, and what I love about the process is that it forces me as a new principal to the building to put together a team that to distribute leadership and make sure that we are building a culture from the ground up. Even though the school's been around for literally 100 years, it needed a reboot, a refresh, and a new mission and vision. And so working with Jesse and the team, there was almost no decisions that were only my decision. And we probably have around 10 people on our team that have been doing school visits, meeting with Jesse and doing mission and vision work. And in a very short amount of time, I feel like we have a definite direction and place that we want to go, despite me wanting it to happen like yesterday. I wish that in public education, things would happen much, much faster. But there is a definite amount of grace and patience that we need to give ourselves. And I think that what I really appreciate with having Jesse on the team is his ability to help me remember that this is not an overnight process. And so you can see the schedule of events that we've done up to this point. But I guess we'll talk about the playbook here in a second. Some bright spots and successes. We currently, I would say that we're in our first like full year of our mission. We have somebody that gets paid an extra 0.2 FTE to spend time focused on our mission. And she also is our librarian. And I think that's something to just think about as you're planning for what's next for your schools, is what kind of support do you have from your district and your community. And being a very difficult school to be at. Our school has the highest retention or highest turnover in our district, and so that kind of paints the picture of how tough it is to be at the school. Um, but you need to have somebody that says like, I'm going to push this mission forward. And so our librarian is somebody that she changed her title from librarian to like experiential coordinator. And so I feel like, sorry, I'm kind of rambling right now. The
I
the
think you're kind of
districts.
pulling out, yeah. So one is what have been some of the levers that you've pulled on, some of the bright spots, but also some of the changes that you've seen so far.
So, and another one of the big changes that we've seen is when we go to the schools and visit these schools, we steal ideas, left and right. And one of the things that we recently did, which I would call a bright spot, is we just unrolled our habits of a learner. And on the surface, it might not seem like that big of a deal, but when we visited several schools, when we walked into the building, it was like in your face. This is what it means to be a, whatever their mascot was, a West Wolf. And so we have really leaned into that idea. And in the spring semester, we unrolled our habits of a learner. And I mean, to the tune of celebrating what it looks like every month, making t-shirts, having there's a church across the street that put up a big banner, habits of a learner at West campus. And so I would say that is a big lever and bright spot that we recently leaned into. You can go ahead and go that next. Oh, actually, I think that challenge, if you want to go back one more, the challenging, I think a challenging thing for many public schools is reputations, teachers that have been around for decades. One of the things that we did last spring when we finally had our mission and vision is I presented it to the staff and said, this is the direction that we're going. And I said it in a very caring and compassionate way, but basically said, if you're not excited about this, there's 56 schools in our district. Let me help you find a way to get you where you want to be, that you are excited. And so with that as our guiding light, we had a lot of turnover again, but the teachers that we had stay are gung-ho about the mission and the direction that we're going. You want to go that next playbook, Jesse? Here's our timeline. Again, a 5-year plan. As I said earlier, I would love for this to be like something that happens overnight, but I think that it's really important that you do lay out what your game plan is, because so many of these things take so much energy, and you're still running a school and you still have discipline happening every day and state testing. And so it's really important that when you get a group together and everybody is super excited and jazzed about your ideas, that you do take small bites, because you want to do each piece of your mission and vision work well, and ensure that you don't bite off too much and burn everybody out early.
Thanks so much, Michael. And I wanted to, and we will share the slides. Yes, absolutely. Michael, did you, and you just, for me, what I want to just call out here before we turn over to Carmen is a couple of key pieces that you identified. One is, this was a process that was a long time coming. You knew you were ready for change because, as we discussed with your group, that this school had a stubborn reputation as a place that wasn't as welcoming, wasn't as connected to the community as you'd wanted it to be, as anybody would want it to be. And that it was, as to put it in really blunt terms, he said, it's either change or else, right? That this is our time to make a difference. Otherwise we might go away. And for you to really lean in on that and say, with those stakes that high, what do we want to be known for? What do we want to be connected to? And seeing you lean in. Yes, you have a 5-year plan, and it would be amazing if it happened day one, but you've been really clear about what success looks like and how you move into that. So I'm excited to hear from others on the call. We'll get into some specific questions, though, about the key pieces, the key levers of that change, what has allowed you to speed up, what has been stubborn and in the way there. But now I'd love to take a little bit of time to hear from Carmen Sanders. Tell us a little bit, and then we're going to turn back to both our panelists with a Q&A.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carmen Sanders. I am the Executive Director of Instructional Support for Alexandria City Public Schools. So all of the general education content areas and programs fall under my supervision. And so I am so grateful to be here with you all to share with you ACPS's journey around learner-centered redesign and how it's currently unfolding in Alexandria City Public Schools. We had the great pleasure of working with Learner Centered Collaborative in May of 2023, and we worked with them for many, many months as we were trying to conceptualize what our what could be school redesign for us. And so, just a little bit of about Alexandria City Public Schools. We are located in Alexandria, Virginia, right outside of DC. We are a division of 18 schools serving approximately 16,000 students. And we have one comprehensive high school that makes up of about 4,500 students across four campuses. Just as you think about the diversity of this really small school community, we have about 38% Hispanic students, 23% Black, 27% white, 7% Asian, about 5% multicultural, and 118 countries of birth and 127 native languages. So we always talk about how diversity is our strength. But as you think about just having one comprehensive high school, the structure alone presents a powerful design challenge. So unlike districts redesigning with multiple high schools, we had to really think about reimagining school within this one high school system serving an entire city. And so, and we did that through a very deep commitment to equity and access for every student. So as you see within the slide, our core design constraints were one high school, four campuses, and ensuring the emphasis on equity and meeting students where we are. So the question for us was really around how do we design learner-centered experiences at scale in a large comprehensive high school model without creating opportunity silos. That was one of our biggest things because prior to implementing our redesign, we did have academies, but they were only serving about 12.6% of our students. And so in December of 2023, our school board adopted the Academies and Pathways model as part of the 2024-25 program of studies implementation. And the truth is that we were building the plane while we were flying it. So I really understand and connect to the sentiments of Michael around wanting things to be accelerated, but knowing that it takes so much buy-in and people understanding for the work to actually actualize, right? So this vision for learning was, of course, grounded in five different components of relationships. Our students really wanted deep, meaningful relationships with teachers, and with just a relationship with school in general. Learners as leaders and owners of their own learning, community as an authentic context for learning, experiential learning or learning by doing, and then, of course, the learner as apprentice and the teacher as mentor, as facilitator. So less of the sage on the stage type of approach, but how do we transition the dynamics in the classroom? And so as we situated this work in a large comprehensive system, we recognize that the traditional department silos we're not going to create the enabling conditions as to use the language of our friends at LCC, but we needed to create some coherence in the academies and pathways. And so the way that Alexandria City Public Schools did that was ensuring an alignment to our 2030 strategic plan, and that was very critical for us. So as I mentioned, you will see our redesign and our academies and pathways built into our 2030 strategic plan in three major ways. Number one, is the first one is around real world learning. So it states that we are committed to meaningful learning experiences through pathways and high quality work-based learning and project-based learning at every level. And so we are fortunate in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Our Virginia Department of Education has really given us very clear expectations around our career connections as we talk about students from kindergarten all the way to grade 12. And we use that as we thought about how to incorporate it into our strategic plan for our division. And our students in K through 5 have to produce an academic and career portfolio, while our students in grades 6 through 8 begin to engage in career investigations. And at the very end of their 8th grade year, they must produce an academic and career plan. And then that plan is revisited multiple times during the academic advisement period in grades 9 through 11, because when they get to their senior year, it should be something that they have really thought intentionally about, not just, alone or with their counselor, but we bring our families along too. The second place that you will see this work is in academic excellence in our strategic plan and ensuring that there's rigorous differentiated instruction through career themed pathways. And so one of the strategies that we recognized was so important was ensuring that what is happening in student services and student support is happening in curriculum and instruction. So we can't do anything separate outside of curriculum and instruction, outside of counseling, because our counselors are such a group that we need to leverage for relationships that are already built with students and families. And then our counselors can't do much without curriculum and instruction because they have to be able to advise on courses and sequence of courses and completers and things of that nature in order for these career themed pathways to come alive. And so we work collaboratively to intentionally show the through lines of that work. And then third, around community partnerships. We are collaborating and building tiered partnerships with businesses and community organizations to support authentic applied learning. And that work is ongoing. And so we want to just ensure that we are reinforcing student voice and choice, innovation through integrated career-focused approaches, and results driven by connecting learning to post-secondary outcomes. So it's not just a program, right? Career and technical education and workforce development is what grounds us, but it is just not about a program. It's about systems level strategy that we are looking at across grade levels. And so, to the redesign playbooks credit, one of the things that we had to do was make sure that we had a very clear identity. And so that is where you see our learner profile. And so we had to sit back and think about what we wanted our ACPS learners to be and to be able to do when they leave our schools. And so our framework for the future defines competencies through the ACPS learner embodying the following attributes: critical thinker, collaborator, communicator, innovator, advocate, and change maker. And so this portrait anchors everything through curriculum, instruction, scheduling, and professional learning. So when students know who they are becoming, right, that is our North Star, and educators know what we are building towards. And when I say they know, I mean it is literally a part of what we are infusing into our written curriculum. So teachers don't have to think about what attribute they're building and developing within students. We say if we are talking about explanation and justification as a part of our Bloom's taxonomy and doing rigorous differentiated instruction, then you know that we are building the skill of critical thinker within our students. And so we are trying to be as explicit as we possibly can. And then, of course, design decisions become coherent because now we are intentionally showing the through lines. And so we know that it just can't live in the in the atmosphere. It has to be put down on paper. I know specifically for our staff in our division. And so, um, within our academy structure, we had to operationalize it. And so, as you see, our career themed academies, the goal was to create smaller learning communities within a large system, ensuring that we were servicing more than the 12.6% of our students that were engaging in academies in a much smaller cohort. Pathways aligned to students' interest, cross-campus coherence, as well as what does Virginia Department of Education tell us around these career-themed academies. It is super explicit for us in Virginia, so we're super grateful for that. And so what you see here around what matters most is that each academy connects academic rigor with career exploration and real-world application. And so, what makes our academy model different is our focus and our continued focus because this is growing, this is evolving, because we are just in year two, right? Year one was implementation. We were learning, we were growing and developing, and asking more questions, learning to ask more questions around the data that we were getting. And so now our focus is moving beyond just the disciplines. And so the first step, of course, is our interdisciplinary planning and asking teachers, how do we connect the subjects? And that is work currently that our high school team, through our academy coach and our academy leads, are doing with my team of instructional specialists. And seeing the connections between subjects. Where we want to get is to our transdisciplinary design, right? And where we start asking, where our educators start asking, what real world problems are students solving that requires multiple bodies of knowledge? So not just the connections, but where can I infuse some different projects or real world learning for our students within the context of their classroom. And so, also, as a part of our identity, we know that physical and cultural space is super important. So we're we have our academies, but now let's just kind of talk about the physical space. We are the Titans, the mighty, mighty Titans at Alexandria City High School. If any of you all have ever seen Remember the Titans, that is our school. So we are no longer TC Williams High School. We went through a name change in 2021 or 2022, but we are still very much the Titans. And so, through the new campus physical design, we wanted to reflect a sense of belonging, share ownership. There was so much community feedback and input, and from both students, staff, families, community partners, school board. And the redesign required coherence between the space, the structure, and what we wanted the students to actually experience there. And so we know that with our redesign, there is a sense of collective pride for our students who get to engage in this campus every single day because it is so technology rich. The spaces around learning and hands-on learning are robust. And so that is what we can hope for. We would hope for all of our physical spaces to look like within our school division. And so I believe this is a video, Jesse.
Hmm.
Um,
I don't know. Let's see. Doesn't look like
I'm
I
not,
have access to the video.
Okay, and I apologize, but there's actually a video that we wanted to, just a 2 or 3 minute video, that we wanted to show you, but we will make sure that you have access to it so you can see what's happening with our academies and pathways, through some of our uh, curriculum expos, through our pathways expos, our curriculum nights, etc. And so if we can go to the next slide, Jesse.
Yeah, sorry I didn't have the link there, but yeah, it looked like it was getting student feedback on the design of the space as you're moving
Yes.
forward, involving student voice at every step of the way.
Absolutely. And so just ensuring that, you know, when we think about early indicators of success, this was a slide that was presented to our school board around our updates, around the academies and pathways. And so this is where the work becomes real. Like we hear back from the students, and we know that there are students collaborating, engaging in inquiry, and creating authentic products. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. But we really want our students to think about the real world learning shifts, right? So not just sitting passively in a classroom and um, taking in knowledge, but how can they become active designers, right? So are they investigating? Are they questioning? Are they creating or prototyping? And then are they presenting, right? How are they developing their communication skills? So, the shift of all of it is that we want students to be deeply engaged in the academy model. And so, just very quickly, if I had to leave you with a few things, as we think about the ecosystem, and I always use the phrase from Learning Center Collaborative around enabling conditions. There are a number of things that I can say are and have been outlined for us around redesign that are important. Um, and I would say, of course, knowing who you want to become, your identity, the enabling conditions around structure, systems, processes, protocols, your partnerships, your learning experiences, and so as well as your professional growth for your staff and your leaders. You cannot leave your leaders out of this equation. And so key lessons that I would leave you with, of course, is to start with your identity, align to strategy, design structures that make your vision inevitable, right? That connection to the strategic plan was so important for us because that is what our school board holds our division staff and our school leadership accountable to. And then build the conditions that allow learner-centered practices to thrive. And so, of course, redesign is complex. It is difficult at times. But when you start, of course, with your learners, you already start from possibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Really appreciate the deep insight on the work you've been engaged in the last 2 years, a year and a half here. Michael, thank you so much. This is a chance for us to now dig a bit deeper here. So if you're on this call and you want to ask a specific question, this is the time, right? We heard a bit about the overview, but what I'm so excited about having the two of you with us today is that you're both in year 2 of this redesign process. That's going from that early phase where everything seems bright and sunny and you're able to put that North Star up there. Now you're moving in, and I want to understand and unpack for others who are going through this process or about to go through it. What are the pieces that came up there like, ooh, we have to compromise there. We have to make sure there's some middle ground to be made, or there's something that we're exploring here that you talk about indicators of success or enabling conditions, like, wow, that turned out to be a really big barrier and we had to deal with that. So I have a couple of questions, but I want to encourage those who are on the call to please type your questions into the chat for our panelists. Let's unpack this a bit. So Carmen, I do want to pick off with one you just were talking about, enabling conditions. What this is for you and for Michael. What have been either some of the most helpful enabling conditions, that moves that have been made either at the district level or at the site level that have allowed for this learner-centered transformation to take place, or what have been some of the conditions that have not been in place that we just need to call out and say, yeah, like, look out for this one. This has been a real barrier. It stood in the way.
Sure. I would say one of the barriers or challenges for Alexandria City High School within the redesign process was thinking about how our buildings are really dependent on one another. So, as we had to go into the master schedule process, there were students who may have to engage in a class at one building because that's where our fine arts rooms are versus a student who was taking nursing and our nursing labs are at the other campus. And so it created an operational challenge for us, specifically around transportation. And so that was a hurdle that we had to get over together and took some really intentional master schedule development, sitting down with the team, looking at how many students were transitioning across periods, and ensuring that while we want to focus in on the student learning experience and how to create a smaller learning community in grades 9 and grades 10, because we know that those are some of your most critical years as you come into high school. How can we minimize, right, the amount of transportation that's needed, minimize student movement as much as we possibly can to maximize on instructional hours and minutes, right? So I would say that that would have been one of the challenges um, that we had to work through. And then um,
Do you feel like you found a workable solution? Are you in the middle of that thorny issue? Like, what does it look like?
we reduced the high school team reduced significantly the amount of transition across periods going into year two, but it took us learning, right? It's not going to be perfect when you first implement, and having to give yourself a significant amount of grace, make some mistakes, but then knowing how to readjust and adjust, right? Adjust and readjust is so incredibly important. And so, yes, we saw significant improvement in year two with transitions, and it is our hope that as we think about the what our high school team is calling teaching through the lens, right? Our uh, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary learning, that it will create more of an opportunity for our students to begin to learn outside of the four walls of the school.
And right before we turn over to Michael here, one of the things I want to call out there, Carmen, is there must be a lot of clarity around permission, opportunity, both at the level of the instructors to be able to make those changes, feel the freedom to shift some of the things that often before that point have frequently been regarded as immovable sometimes when it comes to schedule, and to say, actually, we have that flexibility, you're empowered. At least that's what I'm hearing from this. And then from now, you're saying the students are also going to be empowered in the same way to be able to
Absolutely.
push back.
Through the program of studies implementation and approval process for 26-27, we will be implementing our Titan student ambassadors. And our student ambassadors are going to champion our academies and pathways and really help to build um, knowledge and understanding around what that looks like, and supporting even our teachers around how to do some really problem-based, project-based learning. So really our leaders in this academies and pathways model.
Love it. Michael, let's hear from you. Yeah, when it comes to enabling conditions or anything that jumped up when you were thinking about what Carmen was saying there.
I think the master's schedule definitely was one of the early challenges for us because we have preschool through eighth grade on our campus. And it is a good reminder that the reason you have that mission is so that you have a guiding light and you have something to refer back to, because we continue to have this tension among our staff where we are pushing for small mixed grade level communities. For example, we have our eighth graders all have a first grade buddy. And so like every 2 or 3 weeks, they do activities with the first graders. Well, but that takes away time from language arts or math. And so being a school that has probably 80% or 90% of our students are 2 or 3 grade levels below in language arts and math. We consistently have this conversation about what is our immediate priority, and we keep coming back to the mission. And so there is give and take from both language arts and the math folks. And then we also have a really strong counseling team that is like, we've got to be doing this SEL, got to be doing this SEL. And again, it just comes back to, we need to make sure that every decision that we're doing, whether it's transportation, the master schedule, it all comes back to making sure that we're headed in the right direction, and that direction is our mission.
That clear identity, right? So
Yep.
so central to this work, as when you come up to each decision, suddenly that decision, while still difficult, can be made much easier when you're clear on what matters most. Often, though, we see in these cases where we are how we use our time, and so it's really, really challenging and interesting when you start to unpack and say in there, all right, we've got only so many minutes in a day. What are we going to prioritize? How does our identity help us with that? And then another piece I just want to call it there, Michael, you were describing, test scores and the importance of getting students to grade level and where they need to be. In talking to some of your teachers, I know that you've been really clear on pushing back and saying, what we can't do is continue to do what we've done in the past and expect different results now. So we are going to lean in. We've heard from our community, we've heard from our students about what they want, what's going to make learning relevant for them. And that dictates that we're going to change our schedule, that we're going to prioritize this time together.
Yeah, and we keep coming back to, until we are a school where kids want to belong, where they have positive relationships with the adults and the kids around them, we're not going to see a change in the test scores anyways. And so that really continues to ground us as well. Like, we know that we need to have positive relationships. We need to have those small learning communities. Otherwise, we're not going to grow in our test scores or our enrollment or change our reputation. It all comes back to our mission.
Thank you. You again, for anybody else who wants to put in a question in the chat, please do so. Otherwise, I got plenty. I'm really curious here now. Again, a year and a half into this process, if you were, I know it's not too far down the road, but if you were able to go back and talk to somebody who was just starting, and I know, Carmen, you left us some words of wisdom, so maybe it's those, but if you're thinking back, wow, it's been a journey to get to a year and a half in here. What would I tell myself, or what would I want to know, or what would I do a little bit differently when I was first starting this redesign process that we could elevate?
I would say, just from a systems level, create the plan despite who is there to implement the plan. That was huge for our school division. We had a significant amount of leadership turnover, staff turnover, and the people who left took the plan with them, right? And so I would say, at a systems level, ensure that the plan is developed. There's significant amount of collaboration, so that you're not just getting like buy-in, right? Because buy-in can often feel a little forced, right? But commitment to the plan, through some really intentional work around communications and helping people to think differently, grounded in research, grounded in best practice, grounded in what it means for our students when they have these types of learning experiences. I would say, for me at the time, is, I remember standing at the podium in front of the dais answering questions. That was what I had to lean into. And so I would say that if I had to give myself any advice, those would be the things that I leaned into to help those who might be resistant, those who um, felt like they didn't have the skill to do it. Maybe they had the will, but just, I don't even really know what this means, or how I could make this make sense in my leadership or in my classroom, being super intentional about professional learning far in advance of implementation. Those would be my little nuggets that I would give myself
Well,
going into
well, you're
this
giving them to,
process.
yeah, you're giving them to others right now. So
Yes.
that's important. I just want to, highlight and name a couple pieces there before we turn to you, Michael, is that you were talking about the difference between just buy-in and essentially what I would say is like a co-creation, right? Like the sense of like, we've done this together. And I heard a couple of pieces there. You said one was empowering those on the team with one, the ability to ask questions whenever they want to, but two, giving them access to knowledge and resources. And you're going to be a key part of this team, whether that's professional development that gets you there or just the ability to sit and ask questions and explore with us. Any other, this is for you, Carmen, but also for Michael, anything else we'd say is how do you create that spirit of co-creation, which is different than buy-in?
Yeah, I mean, I am of the co-constructivism um, learning, right? That tends to be my part of my leadership style. And so not doing it in a silo, not saying that this is the best idea because it's my idea, but really sitting down and being a communicator, a collaborator, really modeling what we want our students and our staff to be in my leadership role. And I see one of the questions that was asked in the chat around, do you have enough experience with the redesign to know how it's impacted teacher retention? What I will say is that for the teachers who are deeply committed to what school redesign looks like and feels like for students, they have stayed and they are excited and enthusiastic about the work, to Michael's point. For the teachers who may have had a different vision for what education is, they may have gone to a different school division. Um, I will say that, teacher retention is so deeply connected to leadership. And so, from my perspective as a division leader, I work very closely with leadership so that we're retaining the leaders that are in the places, building their skills, their capacity, so that the teachers know that the leaders are staying and have the skills and capacity to help them to grow. And, research around retention tells us, leadership and not having enough professional learning are significant reasons why teachers leave schools. And so I think that is being in the thick of the work with them is so important.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Michael,
I
whether
would
you want to, yeah, jump in.
I would just piggyback on some of that and add that the redesign team that you pick is really important with who's on that team. We, for example, have 10 people on our team, and it includes a counselor, it includes a office secretary, an AP, and then a variety of teachers from um, second grade all the way through eighth grade. And to the retention point, the teachers that are not the teachers, everyone that's on that group stuck around and they're still excited about the work and they're using the work that we're doing to recruit other people in the district. So, 56 schools in our school district, we're all competing for the same very small pool of applicants. But what I saw from first year to second year is teachers actively going out and recruiting teachers from other buildings and saying, "Hey, come look at what we're doing here. Come see the work that we're doing with getting it community involvement. Come see how impactful it is to have an eighth grader be a mentor to a first grader or a kindergartner." And so it definitely has had a snowball effect.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that, and the comment in this is yes, recruit with your vision. Literally, right, Michael? I've seen now a couple of news reports, your local celebrity, where you've been interviewed about changes happening at your school site, and you start off talking about your vision, being very clear on that vision, and then inviting others in the community to get on board with you. And they've done so, whether that is lining up all sorts of collaborative learning opportunities or donating equipment. You have a new climbing gym in there, right? So it is being very clear about what that vision is. Do you want to speak to that at all, about how you've sort of opened up the redesign to the community?
I think it's just any time that I have the opportunity to talk to a community member, I let them know what we've got going on over at West. But also being strategic in that, making sure that we're not trying to bring in so many people all at once without really, trying to see what sticks. And so when I do have those opportunities, whether it's talk to the news or talk to our district leadership, I just bring it up as many times as I can. Hey, this is what we're doing. Come check it out. Come see the work that we're doing at West, because that word of mouth is the way that we're going to change the reputation of our school.
We've got just a little bit of time left. So one, I want to make sure and give a moment here for Judith's question, and then we'll close this out with a final couple of thoughts. But Judith says, in my district, we've had a turnover of leaders and teachers because of new programs are introduced every year, but no time is given to fully implement them. How can this problem be changed? Big problem. Thoughts?
Initiative fatigue is real. And until we can acknowledge it at the division level, and really think strategically about what is going to impact student outcomes the most, our chief financial officer always says that we can do oh, yes, here it is. He always says that we can do anything, but we can't do everything, right? And so, what is going to have the greatest impact for our students? And, for our division, we've narrowed it down to, really strong tier one instruction, high quality tier one instruction. Um, with a focus with embedded professional learning around that, so whether it's adoption of high quality instructional materials, whether it's career pathways and really elevating how we implement our partnerships for students and think about experiential learning for them. We have not veered from what we have said that we are going to implement. This is now year 4 in this role for me as an executive director of instructional support. And so listening to teachers, I'm always in schools, I'm always in class. We have a teacher advisory council for our division. And so really listening to the staff in which it impacts the most is so important. And so if leaders aren't listening to the people who are in the schools to implement, and we always have to listen, right, with um, a global perspective. What are we being told from Virginia code, state code? What are we being told from the Virginia Department of Education? And then trying to make it make sense for our leaders and our staff. That is our consistent work, right? But to narrow down the strategic focus of the work is how you change that problem. What is going, and we ask ourselves this question: what is going to have the greatest impact on our students, right? So high quality tier one instruction embedded with high quality instructional materials, social emotional learning, culturally responsive teaching. Though that's huge, right? And then thinking about what that means for how students are preparing for life beyond school, right? College, career, military, workforce. And so I think that is having a very strategic focus, keeping the main thing, and not trying to infuse 50,000 things, thinking that it's going to be a magic pill. That is what we've been learning in our division. Shout out to our Office of School Improvement. We ask questions. We don't just throw spaghetti on the wall and hope that it sticks. We really lean into inquiry and ask more questions so that we're not solving for the wrong thing.
Thank you so much. Michael, a last word on this before I
I
close this out?
mean, yeah, I can't do better than that. Carmen's the decision maker. I just try to run interference before when that stuff comes down from our district and try to land it as softly as possible so that to decrease the amount of stress in an already stressful situation. So, yep, amen, Carmen.
And what I'm hearing you both say though, one thing is identity is not a program, right? Like being really clear on what your North Star is, where you're going, that allows you to say yes or no. And oftentimes it's saying no, right? Like what do we need to say no to so that we can focus on our North Star and the key things that we've said yes has come through loud and clear. We are just about out of time. I'm going to just make sure that we share our contact and follow up. But again, just grateful. If you had questions that you still wanted to ask, please do put them into the chat or follow up with me. We continue to work with partners all over the country in this work. We would love to have you join us or again, ask questions or share your strengths and your approach to this work. This has been said several times in different ways throughout our time today, but when we start with learners at the center here, right, we start with a place of possibility. And that is what is in driving all this work. We know what we're redesigning towards. It's not redesign just for the sake of redesign. It's about empowering learners in all that they do. And so thank you so much, Carmen. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here. And again, just appreciate your insights and look forward to checking in 9 more months when we can learn with this group about all the latest successes you've had. So thank you again. Take care.